Today on Hearts of Heroes, a monumental flood turns small-town Wisconsin upside down.
At that point, we seen the water rising so fast we started to evacuate people.
But the people had the power to save the day.
Our first assignment was where we rescued a girl sitting on the roof of her car.
And later, a second-story fire leaves few options for escape.
I told my sister and my nephew, I said, we got to go out that window.
Thankfully, first responders were right there. But would they be able to rescue them in time?
Come on, you have to get out!
I did say to myself, she's got about 2 minutes to live.
With no time to lose, first responders were doing everything they could to get to those in need.
As a meteorologist, I've seen it time and time again. You get 3 to 4 inches of rain falling in just an hour or two, and then that quickly overwhelms otherwise placid creeks and rivers. The result? Flash floods that engulf entire communities.
So when an overnight storm hit outside of Madison, Wisconsin, many residents needed help to escape the flooding. Thankfully, first responders were right there.
Black Earth, Wisconsin. It's a small town located in Dane County, just west of the state capital, Madison. It boasts a world-class trout stream and is full of pleasant, hard-working people who make great neighbors.
It's a small town, it's friendly, people care about each other.
On August 20th, 2018, Black Earth and the neighboring towns of Mazomanie and Cross Plains started to get some rain. And a whole lot of it.
It started raining here early afternoon, and it just kept getting heavier and heavier.
My daughter had driven me up to work. I work at the bowling alley downtown. People were in and out. We were all kind of watching the storms. It just seemed like the sirens never stopped. It was just constant. We couldn't figure out what was going on.
All that rain meant one thing: flooding.
We were requested to assist the Cross Plains Fire Department with a swift water rescue. That caught lots of people's attention because we don't have swift water rescues around here, ever.
Pelted by more than 11 inches of rain in a 3-hour period, multiple creeks and rivers overflowed their banks. Bridges were washed away. Roads became impassable.
Our first plan as a fire department was to try and sandbag and protect property, and we learned a few hours into this that the water was coming up so fast that that just wasn't possible.
The flooding began miles away, but due to the lay of the land, the chief knew that the path of destruction would soon inundate surrounding villages.
Water was starting to cross Highway 14 in the village of Black Earth. So at that time, I made a phone call to their fire chief, Mitch Hodson, and let them know that they needed to get back to their station because it was going to be flooding soon.
We set up a command post at the village office because it was flooded down at the station. We never thought water would ever get that close, and then the main street right in front of the village office started to flood too. At that point, we seen the water rising so fast we started to evacuate people for multiple blocks.
Concerned for the safety of his wife and visiting sister-in-law, Chuck Theobald called for help.
4 firemen came across our backyard and immediately formed a plan.
The firefighters carried the ladies across the yard to higher ground at a neighbor's house.
I followed behind with a fireman on each side of me through the backyard in water 4 inches above my waist.
Because so many major roads were washed out, it was imperative to gather resources for water rescues.
During that evacuation mode, we ended up bringing in mutual aid fire departments from southern Wisconsin, 2 swift water rescue teams, about 6 other fire boats. There were several rescues that were performed by private citizens.
Those volunteer rescues came from all angles and in all shapes and sizes, too.
I thought I would stop and ask the local police if I could take Highway 14 home, and he said, "Would you like to rescue some people tonight?" I go, "If you need me, I'd be happy to do that."
Pete Kramer's massive Army surplus vehicle came in extra handy that night.
Our first assignment was where we rescued a girl sitting on the roof of her car. She happened to be driving through an area and got washed into the lumber yard. 100% of the time the water is probably here. When we go to the rescue places, the water was up to here.
When all was said and done, Pete saved 18 people, 1 dog, and pulled a few emergency vehicles out of deep water with that chain.
You'd be surprised how much of the community came back to save our heroes. Everybody's heroes. It's not just me. It's not just our first responders. Everybody helped.
A hero is someone who selflessly puts their own wants and needs aside for the greater good and safety of someone else, oftentimes a stranger. That's the mark of a true hero. They want to help others in the face of adversity.
Annie McKenzie was one of many who stood tall that nasty night. She'd rushed home from work, knowing that her place was directly in the flood zone.
The currents between the 2 houses on both sides of us was so strong we had firewood flying through the currents coming at us as we're trying to walk through.
Despite her basement being flooded, Annie didn't blink, helping Black Earth firefighters carry frightened neighborhood kids through the water to their trucks.
I said, I think there's fish nibbling at my toes. So I got the girls laughing and we were having fun. So by the time we got them to the fire truck, they were pretty well calmed down.
With the invaluable aid of their citizens and other agencies, these 2 volunteer departments who normally handle from 50 to 100 calls in an entire year kept their cool and came up huge on the busiest night in local history.
We ended up evacuating about 100 houses with multiple people by boat, by truck, all kinds of means.
We're proud to have walked away with no civilian or public safety injuries.
Coming up, the flood finally receded, but the damage still there.
It's kind of like a second home, and you walk in and it's just destroyed. Just horrible feeling.
Whoa!
And later,
Section 37, got one hanging in the window, fully engulfed.
when a house fire leaves a family with a baby stranded on the 2nd story, the clock is ticking.
We got 2 minutes to get this woman out of the window.
Got her, grab her, grab her, grab her, grab her! Got her.
But first, a tip on how to keep you safe.
Floods are the most common natural disaster in the United States. They may result from rain, snow, hurricanes, storm surges, and even overflows of dams or levees.
If you're under a flood warning, find safe shelter right away. Failing to evacuate flooded areas, entering flood waters, or remaining after a flood has passed can put you and your loved ones in harm's way.
Planning ahead is vital to ensuring that you can evacuate quickly and safely, no matter what the circumstances. Have a plan in place and heed the warnings put forth by authorities. They are there for your protection and to keep you safe.
In August 2018, a 500-year storm pummeled 3 small towns in Wisconsin. The community united to evacuate hundreds of people from their homes and prevent any casualties.
I didn't do it to get any kind of hero status. I did it for the people.
For Black Earth Fire Chief Mitch Hodson, coming back to his flooded station house was a tough moment.
When we opened the door the first time, there was more water in the station than outside of the station. So it's kind of like a second home. And you walk in and it's just destroyed. Just horrible feeling.
Over in Mazomanie, the flood struck a devastating blow. A quarter of the population was now homeless.
People needed food, people had nothing. They had to evacuate with nothing.
Annette Geisler, the wife of the fire chief, helped organize support services.
This room that we're in now became a temporary village office. The fire station is a place where you can come and you can get the information, the help.
That momentum of brotherhood exploded within the community.
In the weeks to come, the people of Dane County used that small town spirit and cooperation to move forward and rebuild their lives.
Throughout the whole ordeal, it was like people were showing up and kind of, next thing you know, things are just being carried out for you.
In Black Earth, the flooded fire station is being brought back to life, thanks to a lot of volunteers and an assist from our sponsor, disaster restoration specialist, Belfour.
Fire departments nationally are near and dear to Belfour's heart. We like to be first responders with you folks.
Though this historic flood might have been immensely powerful, In the end, the people of Black Earth and Mazamani proved that they were stronger.
The way the community came together was just amazing. To have all those people come out and volunteer to help us out, it brought tears to your eyes and made you realize how glad you are that you are living in a small town.
Coming up, officers responding to a fire discover that there's a family trapped inside the building.
And as soon as the cold air hit me, I blacked out.
Can first responders get to them in time?
Got one hanging in the window.
I really can't imagine the terror, but being caught inside a fast-moving house fire is scary, and often there is little time to escape.
Thankfully for one family, firefighters, police, and everyday citizens joined forces and worked in tandem to come to the rescue.
The city of Butler, Indiana is in the northeastern side of the state, about 23 miles outside of Fort Wayne. With a population of just 2,700, to say the town is sleepy might be an understatement.
There isn't really a whole lot to do here, unfortunately, because it's a small city. We have a lot of parks here, though, so a lot of people utilize our parks.
And while they may not have malls or shopping centers, the people here enjoy the perks that come with living in a modest rural community.
Just being able to work for a small community, you can establish relationships with the people. Your general duty is just serving the community, patrolling the streets.
People usually get along pretty good. There's a lot of friendly people here. They help out a lot.
But one chilly January morning, Barbara was about to be helped in ways that she could have never imagined.
I was visiting with my sister, and I'd spent the night there, and we'd just gotten up and had coffee that morning.
As the women relaxed at the kitchen table, Barbara's brother-in-law went down to his first-floor shop. And suddenly, life took a terrible turn.
And the next thing I know, I heard him hollering, "Get out of the building," that it was on fire.
The two sisters were not the only ones in danger. Barbara's nephew and niece, along with her baby, were also trapped in the upstairs apartment. Barbara immediately jumped into action.
I was very scared, but I was raised to get the youngest ones out first.
Barbara first rushed her niece and niece's baby to the stairwell.
I sent my niece and the baby out first. They managed to make it down the stairs.
But when Barbara, her sister, and nephew tried to escape, smoke and flames had already overtaken the stairs. They had no choice but to retreat.
Safety experts have some key advice to keep you safe in case of a house fire. First, make sure to always have an evacuation plan. Second, make sure your home is equipped with fully operational smoke detectors. And third, make sure to have a working fire extinguisher on hand.
As the smoke and flames raged through the building, Officer Adam Watts was down the street, having what seemed like an ordinary patrol shift.
That morning, I was actually sitting south of the city, just observing traffic flow off the side of the road. When the call came out, and as I was responding, I could see smoke probably a good 100, 200 feet in the air.
Officer Watts turned on his siren and rushed to the scene. But back at the apartment building, Barbara knew that there was no time to wait. Downstairs, the fire had caused a propane tank to explode.
Then I heard an explosion, and I seen the window. So I told my sister and my nephew, I said, "We got to go out that window."
By this time, Officer Watts made it to the scene.
Worked my way around into the alley between the buildings, and there were some other civilians there. It was just happening real fast.
Barbara and her family had no choice but to jump. Officer Watts, along with a group of people that had come up to help, braced themselves to catch the people trapped in the fire above.
Let's go! Let's go! Come on!
My sister jumped first, they caught her, and my nephew, he was a little scared of heights, so I had to give him a shove. Then I throwed my little dog out.
Barb, come on!
And then shortly after that is when Barb emerged from the window.
Come on, Barb! Come on!
And we're all yelling at her to jump,
And I went to go out the windows. I had half my body out. And as soon as the cold air hit me, I blacked out.
Coming up, With only moments to spare, the team of heroes would have to devise a daring rescue plan.
She's got about 2 minutes to live. We got 2 minutes to get this woman out of the window.
But first, a safety tip.
If not properly used, many small everyday home items can unfortunately lead to disaster.
Listen, space heaters need space. In many homes, they're necessary, but can also cause fires if too close to other items. Of course, we need to be warm in the winter, but no one wants to cause a house fire, so please give them space.
Listen to the pros when it comes to fire safety. They've seen it all and know all too well how tragedies happen. It's our responsibility to make sure we all have a safer future.
One frigid January morning in Butler, Indiana, Barbara Minat and her family had found themselves trapped in an upstairs apartment engulfed by a raging fire. But just as Barbara was about to jump, she passed out with smoke and flames surrounding her, her limp body left hanging half out the window.
But it was definitely the full inside, you could tell was on fire. Smoke pouring out everywhere, all the cracks in the brick building.
Central 37, two's jumped, got one hanging in the window, fully engulfed.
Time was not on their side. They had to act quickly.
I did say to myself, she's got about 2 minutes to live. We got 2 minutes to get this woman out of the window. And then the next thing in my mind is, how are we going to accomplish this?
Officer Watts and Chief Nichols were not trained firefighters, but they knew if they didn't act quickly, Barbara would not make it out of this ordeal alive.
Come on, you have to get out!
There was a ladder, but the ladder was not high enough to reach the window.
So we got the ladder put up on top of the trailer, and Chief got up, and probably after about 15, 20 seconds, you know, he started yelling for me to come up.
And at that point, I just began to try and pull Barbara out of the window. It was very tough because the thick black smoke was pouring out in my face, and there was probably 3 or 4 times where I just couldn't breathe.
Chief Nichols couldn't get a grasp on Barbara's clothes to pull her out.
All I could do at that point was try and pull her out about an inch or 2 at a time and get her up on my shoulder.
With literally moments to spare, Chief Nichols pulled Barbara out. And with the help of Officer Watts, he descended the unstable ladder with Barbara right over his shoulder. Chief Nichols and Barbara crashed onto the trailer. But the fall may have actually saved her life.
She hit the trailer and it made her take in a deep breath. And then I saw that her eyes were starting to move a little bit, so I knew then that she was still alive.
Let's get out.
As soon as we got out of the alleyway, and you could see in my body camera, when I turned around, that entire alley was full of smoke. So it was just in a matter of nick of time that we got out of there. Before you couldn't stand in it.
Once they were out of harm's way, Chief Nichols took a moment to process what had just happened.
I was overcome with emotions. It was the first time that I'd ever saved somebody's life to that magnitude, where it was just undeniable that if we wouldn't have got her out of the window, she would have died.
It just goes to show you the lengths these brave heroes will go to in order to save someone's life. Chief Nichols and Officer Watts didn't think about themselves. They just knew that if they didn't act quickly, the outcome could have been tragic.
Barbara, along with Officer Watts and Chief Nichols, were taken to the hospital with minor injuries and smoke inhalation. But Barbara is eternally grateful for the bravery of these 2 men who saved her life.
I thank them very much, and they are my guardian angels. Very much.
You're very much welcome.
I will never forget what they done for me.
Not long after that fateful day, the 2 officers were honored for their service and bravery.
We had a awards banquet, and one of our House representatives was here to award myself and Officer Watts with our life-saving award.
He did not have to do what he did, but his bravery saved my life.
While floods and fires can be devastating, they can also bring communities closer together.
And give us all a greater appreciation for the heroes who are there when we need them.
Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.